Megan, welcome to the show. So for my audience, today I'm on a call with Megan Rath, which is VP of Strategic Partners of MD Hyperbaric. She will tell us in a second what this is and enlighten us what way brought her to that position. And very happy to meet you today. Maybe I give you the chance to introduce yourself very quickly, and then we will go into your story.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Megan Rath. I am VP of Strategic Partnerships at MD Hyperbaric. I've been there about a year, almost a year. And so I came to them through an introduction through a friend of mine, also in the wellness business. And it is a business that I've wanted to be in for quite some time. I just never quite knew how to break into it. And so I also have a history of athletics and sports of all kinds. And so through injury and kind of a curiosity to figure out how to keep playing and improve myself so that I can continue on as I get older has really become a mission for me. And so I can finally say now at 45, I'm living my ethos and I'm working in the business and also really need the therapies that I work with to keep me in the game. I've had a history of 5 knee surgeries. I've had a huge comeback from those surgeries to climb the 7 summits, which is the tallest peak on each continent. And then I've just most recently climbed another 8,000 meter peak called Manaslu, which is also in Nepal.
So, wow. So
coupled with the passion and a comeback story and orthopedic background, it's just really all come together for me at 45.
All right. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for sharing this. What brought you to climb the 7 highest peaks in the world or on each continent? What is your story which led you there?
So first I will say that I am a city slicker. I've lived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States for the last 20 years. And so this was not a natural fit. So how does a city slicker me go on to do this? Well, I was in between jobs. I quit my big ortho job back in 2016, October, and I had another one lined up. I was going to go into spinal cord stim with a new technology company out of California, and I took a month off. And I hiked into Everest Base Camp. I had seen the brochure earlier in the year, and I thought, God, who could take 3 weeks off that lives in the United States? But nonetheless, I went, and on the 4th or 5th day, I actually mustered this 20 seconds of insane courage, and I walked up to a complete stranger. And it turns out she was there to climb a 6,000 meter peak called Lobuche in preparation for climbing Everest. And she had told me that she was trying to become the oldest Indian woman and that she was also climbing 7 summits. And had I heard of it? And of course I had not, because why would I have? And so we went our separate ways, but then we agreed to meet again in Kathmandu in about a week. And so it was at that moment in our meeting in Kathmandu that she told me kind of how to do this. And so she was the catalyst for kind of igniting this spark and to try something new, which was mountaineering, because I had never been there. I didn't grow up with the mountains, although my father's from Vienna, Austria. I had never personally grew up in the mountains. And so it was something I wanted to try. And she told me how to start with Kilimanjaro, something with low stakes and high altitude, and see how you do. And that's how I started.
Yeah, wow. I've lately been to Africa and saw Kilimanjaro, so very impressive mountain because it's there in the savannah and then it's very high from the flat surface. And so what happened? Why did you have so many? Was it injuries or so many problems with knees? Maybe
that's a great question. So women in general have a little bit more knee issues and you're more at risk of injury because of our anatomy, the hip to knee ratio. And then also just it puts a lot of pressure, the Q angle puts a lot of pressure on the women's patellas. But my knees are in great shape except for the patellas. So I just want to make note of that. So my left patella, I had come in from a run when I was 27. And I went to go stretch the backside, my glutes. I literally put my ankle over my knee, bent down, and I had this massive, obnoxious crack. And I didn't know it at the time, and nobody really knew it at the time, really until I had the surgery back in 2022, which was the cartilage had separated from the bone. This one simple move that I had done 1,000 times, literally, over the years had separated the cartilage. And so what happened was over the years, it got worse and worse, kind of like a hangnail, until it was so painful. It was like ripping from the bone. And so I found a surgeon. I was introduced actually through a triathlete friend who's also an orthopedic surgeon, who introduced me to a specialist in New York out of HSS, Andreas Kamal. And so that is how I found the root of the problem, basically when I was 42, so 15 years later. So I was suffering, although I still worked out. I did have Ironmans and the Olympic distance triathlon, played tennis, golf, but it just got worse and worse to a point where I couldn't do those things. And then on the right side, it just was more of a compensation issue, because the left side had this and you're always compensating on the right side, even though you don't really know it. And then I think naturally the right side is tighter. You're driving all the time. And so my quads were tighter, and really having to work on full range of motion, working through a full range of motion when you squat, lunge, all of those things. And so making sure that you have, when you're doing your not just squats, but your deadlifts and so forth, that you're really working through that full range. And so that is something I've really had to work on these last 3 or 4 years. I've really pushed, I mean, I'd say 3 years at this point, but I've really been focusing on a full range of motion, working out the muscle imbalance weakness situation, and still struggling with some issues, but it's the best it's ever been. And so because of all of the things I have done with the mobility and the strength work, and I'm not running anymore, which is a shame. I hope to maybe one day, but not today. I've been able to stay out of the operating room. So ultimately I do need patella transplants, cartilage transplants, which is where you would pull it from not a cadaver, but a deceased person who's a donor, and you would take the cartilage from their knee, and then they would, like a plug, they'd plug your patellas. And so, but today is not the day. It's a big surgery. It's bigger than you think. And so I've been able to stay in it through the things I just mentioned, but also he put bone marrow aspirate concentrate, also known as BMAC. He took it from my tibia, the plateau, and drilled it directly into my patella bone. And so that has also helped with edema and swelling, and has really kind of helped regenerate the bone a little bit, because that's ultimately what hurts when you have exposed bone and no more cartilage. And so that kind of leads me to the next thing, which is, as I've progressed, I've had to find different ways to do things, right? Staying hydrated, right? So I have recently just been to, I told you, Manaslu and Restore Hyper Wellness, which is more or less a wellness center or a studio where they have things like IVs, cryotherapy, red light therapy, compression, sauna, all the things, hyperbaric as well, soft shell hyperbaric. And so they have been a big reason why I've been able to stay in the game through hydration, getting an IV once or twice a week, keeping the inflammation down with some of the cryotherapy, and also red light. So combination there. And then obviously right now I'm working with another company, just most recently, MD Hyperbaric, in the last year. And their whole mission is to bring medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy to the street. And so the ability to have impact on people who have had surgery recently, like orthopedic surgery, plastic surgery, things like autoimmune diseases, things like concussions, TIAs, brain injuries. It's game changing. And not to mention things like longevity, health, wellness, performance, recovery. It's all good for those things. And I definitely jump in. I haven't been able to do it post climb this time around for the last month, because I actually was sick and I had some ear issues. And so you cannot do it when you cannot really pressurize your ear well, because the pressure is pretty intense. So I haven't been able to do it post Manaslu, but those companies really keep me in the game. And then even more recently, really looking at things like my gut health and trying to figure out how to heal myself with my food. So really identifying what foods work best for my body. And you would think, for instance, kale is a superfood for me, but spinach is an avoid food for me. So you think you're eating the right foods for you, and come to find out, just because it's good, you think it's good, doesn't mean it is good for you based on your gut microbiome and so forth. And so really looking at ways to eat effectively and best for my body to avoid bloating and producing the output I want and the workouts I want and so forth. So really taking a look at a comprehensive look at all those things. And like I said, not just the food sensitivity, but your DNA, your NAD, your hormones, right? I'm 45. When my perimenopause, everybody's talking about menopause, perimenopause. I'm not. But the best way to know those things is to get tested and get your blood drawn specifically for all of your hormones, whether you're female or male. And that way you have a great picture, having an understanding of what and where you're at this moment, so that you can do something about it to optimize yourself, which is what it's all about. Because really, at the end of the day, it's not thinking about, oh, can I live to 150, in my opinion. It's about, can you live well in your 70s, 80s, and 90s and do the things you want to do, or are you going to be stuck in a nursing home?
I have some questions. I
Go
have
ahead.
some questions. So because I do not know if this is so clear to everyone, what your achievements, meaning climbing those very high mountains, mean with that kind of knee injury. So myself, I was a physical therapist in my prior or my early life or early career. So I've seen a lot of knee injuries for patients who describe similar symptoms to you or have similar problems to you. Usually they are very happy if they can do some Nordic walking, normal walking in flat surface again. That's already an achievement for them. When they can go the stairs without pain, that's super good. There is no one who is aiming to do more than 1 hour, 2 hour climbs in. And so this is one part I know. And then I know the mountaineering part. So as said, I recently climbed Mount Kenya, which is at least almost 5,000 meters, right? So I've done some 4,000 meter high peaks in the Alps. So I know the mountains, and it's a completely different game. So with that knee problems, being able to climb and to achieve this thing is insanely impressive. I like what you're saying is, okay, I have a holistic approach. I try to get hormones right, food right, do the right exercise, get the right IV drops, and so on. So maybe you can tell us in more detail. So what was the one thing which maybe had the biggest impact for you, and how is that related now to your work at MD Hyperbaric? Because I think this was one thing you used, right?
Yes, it is. And especially when I came back from Everest a year ago, I had some lung issues. So anyway, so to backtrack, you're right. So even my surgeon, who's out of HSS in New York, he's one of the probably the top guys for cartilage transplants. We joke, we can't believe it. He's like, I cannot believe you're in this. And my knees this last time only swelled a little bit. They were back to normal within a few days. So I think it goes back to keeping the inflammation down. I don't really drink anymore either. I do have some sugar. I try and keep it to a minimum within reason. But really reworking my body, the mobility, rebalancing my body has been a big part of that. So that, I would say that. I forgot to mention, I also get the gel injections. So twice a year times 3, I go and get the knee injections. Do they help? He says yes, he thinks they help. For me, it's more of a mental thing that helps me, because I think about all the stuff and could be potential damage I'm doing continuing to further this down the road. But it makes me feel like at least I'm helping myself, right? So everything I'm doing is helping myself to stay in the game. And so you're right. For me, so one of the things that saves me at the really high altitudes on an 8,000 meter peak, shockingly, I just seem to get better and better the higher I get, which is counterintuitive. It's crazy. That's one thing. But 2, when you descend on an 8,000 meter peak, you actually kind of go down sideways, because if you were to walk down like a flight of stairs, you would fall over. And so you have rope, you've got one hand on the back rope, one on the front. It's a line. I mean, you're kind of straddling and you're kind of walking sideways down.
Which is the worst for the knee.
Which is actually, no, it saves me, because it's just my patellas. And so
true.
So my glutes really have to load. The glute med really loads on the way down and controlling your steps. And so that helps me. You also rappel down sections. So some of the worst stuff is more undulating and flat, if you can believe it. But the reality is, because I have reworked my body, it's still not where I want it to be, but I'm the best I've been in probably 20 years. That has been a big factor, focusing on the strength of the glutes, the quads, the hamstrings, the calves, aligning my feet. I have a flatter foot. And so realigning kind of how you walk, how you move mechanically is a big thing. You don't realize how off you are. I mean, I knew I felt twisted. I mean, I have felt twisted and I just kind of got away with it, right? You get away with it till you don't. But reworking my mechanics, And then focusing on the anti-inflammatory diet stuff without alcohol, not so much sugar. I have some, but not a lot. Really getting an idea of what's going to work with my body for my food. All of those things add up. But the mechanics, having the right physiotherapists in my corner, I had personal trainers. I mean, I got it all, right? It's not something you start with. You have to figure it out. And I always tell people, you can't compare yourself to me because I have worked up to this, right? When I started trying to rework my body, I had to Google things, I looked up things, hip mobility, all the things, physiotherapy, and I built myself kind of this program personally for myself. And so when I tell people who are just starting out, who feel off or they've got pain here, there, and everywhere, you got to break it down. Start with your mechanics. Look at your diet, get your sleep right. Now, it's not perfect for everybody. It's not perfect for anybody who even gets great sleep every night, right? It's a real work, but all of those things add up. And then you add the therapies on top of it, whether it's cryo or hyperbaric oxygen, or I haven't started any hormones or peptides. I'm going to start some peptides pretty soon. All of those things are just add-ons, right? And they just compound and help what you already have started. And so if you can't get the basics right, how you move, it doesn't matter how good your peptides are if you're not moving right, if your mechanics are off. So really working with a professional to get your mechanics right, and know, even if they're not right today, I know the triggers. Every time my left leg, I have to remember really kind of pull back when I'm walking with that medial hamstring every step. Otherwise, my left leg kind of goes a little bit out to the side, not quite straight. So I have to remember thinking, okay, bring it back every step right now, but I'm closer than ever. So anyways, that's a long-winded answer, but I always tell people it's so easy to get overwhelmed in healthcare. So
Yeah,
easy. You don't know
100%.
where to start. You don't know who's full of shit, who's real, who's telling you the truth. And so you have to do your research. And that's why guys, you who are bringing people on to help and be as a resource for your group, I think is important. And personal story, right? A lot of people, I think, talk about different therapies, but they haven't had an issue big enough to really say, this has got me back, or this has made a huge difference. So that's a little bit different of my story. And then, as far as the climbing goes, I'm going to take it as far as I can take it. I've got an amazing team out of Austria that I work with, and I have for years. And that's another important thing, right? We get it right. The safety's right. The operations are right. The lead guides are right. The decision-making is right. All of those things actually also add on to success and sickness and so forth. And so all of those pieces have to come together, and they have for me because I've done all of the work and the research to get there. So I would add that. But then kind of moving a little bit forward, you were asking me about the role at Hyperbaric, MD Hyperbaric. And so one of the things I will say is, for wellness companies out there that are looking to scale at a fairly quick rate, the strategic partnership role is essential, because a lot of people are thinking Meta, Google ads, direct to consumer, and that is part of the game, don't get me wrong. But bringing in a strong strategic partner to the brand is a rainmaker deal in a way, because it escalates the amount of people, consumers, whoever, walking through your door, buying your product, using your services, whatever. And so identifying the ideal client, the ideal partnership, to me is huge. And then having someone who has some vision to figure out who that can be. And so this year,
maybe you can quickly explain in 3 sentences what Hyperbaric is, what it does, and then extend on that what you just said. So what are the perfect strategic partnerships for you? Let us just learn more about that. I think it's very interesting.
Sure. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy is basically pressurized oxygen. And you breathe this pressurized oxygen in for about 60 to 90 minutes. And the whole point is that it forces the oxygen into cells to help things heal faster. Kind of a dumbed down example.
Yeah.
And so when you have an injury, whether it's a sports injury, whether it's a hamstring pull, tear, it's an ACL, you're coming back from surgery, a hip knee surgery, plastic surgery, it gets the oxygen into your bloodstream so things can heal faster. That's more or less what we're talking about. And so when you do it consistently, we have what are called protocols for different indications. And when you follow the protocols, it helps you get back to your life quicker and faster. Some things take longer than others. So for an acute injury, whether it's a surgery or acute like concussion, you have somewhere between 5, 10, 15, 20 sessions. For someone with a long-term sickness or illness or autoimmune, you might need up to 40 sessions, condensed and concentrated and front-loaded, and then maybe a weekly session to kind of keep it where it needs to be. And so the power of the oxygen, so let me back up. So people are just kind of learning about hyperbaric oxygen. It hasn't been readily accessible, but it's been around for 100 years. So people might know it from scuba diving, right? So if you end up with a bend, so for those scuba divers out there, I scuba dive, but not all the time. If you come up too quickly, you can damage yourself. You can have the gases, it's escaping me. Anyways, you end up with a thing called the bends. And so you need to go into these, what we call a tank. It's a hyperbaric oxygen tank chamber. Yep. And it's called a dive, where you go and they bring the oxygen to help you get the oxygen reoxygenated. And so that helps you heal faster and get the gases in your body back to normal. And so when you have surgery, you have an autoimmune concussion, this helps people basically cut their recovery time by an X%. Everybody's different, how often you're going, how long you're going for. I mean, there's a little bit of an art to it, but it basically helps you heal faster because you have more oxygen coming into your body that's forced into your body to go to parts specifically that may or may not get a lot of blood flow, tendons, like Achilles tendon, ACL, things this. And then the other side of that piece is the longevity performance recovery piece. And so after you've done maybe a big race, whether it's a triathlon or a trail running or a skiing day or whatever, you can go into a session and it basically helps your muscles heal faster and recover faster. The DOMS, right? Like delayed muscle soreness. And so you can come back and feel great the next day. And I can tell you personally, even after one session, for a performance standpoint, you feel great the next day. So if you're flying all over the world, you come home and you need a little extra help, one session to me will help you. Now, it's not going to stay in you forever. It's like everything else. You can't just do something one time and expect it to stick around. You can't eat great one time. You can't get one night of good sleep. You can't work out once a week and expect results. So it's all about consistency, everything else in life. But I can tell you after one session, you'll feel good. That night you're going to sleep great. The next day you're going to be like, oh, I'm not as sore, or I feel like I have more jump in my step or in the water or on the bike or whatever. And then I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, you can finish. My next question would just be, how do you connect this technology to all the other things you just talk about? Because I think that's the relevant part of strategic partnerships. That's the relevant part of thinking in an holistic way about health. So how do you combine all of that? How do you make sure this is, you mentioned the example with the spinach. So how do you make sure that these things are right for you or for one? And this is where I would be interested in.
So oxygen helps everybody, right? Spinach versus a kale example I gave you earlier. There's no one on this planet who couldn't benefit from an oxygen therapy session. Everybody could. And so that's one. So the next piece of that is the power of a strategic partner. And so with MD Hyperbaric, we're looking at a lot of different things. And right now we have a few nationwide that we're partnering with, but specifically we are focusing in the local levels, the regional levels, getting heavily involved within the community, because ultimately when we bring the hyperbaric oxygen business to the community, we need to be involved there. People need to know us. And so we're not a McDonald's or Taco Bell where people are going to just walk in. So as an example, one of the things I'm working on right now in a specific region is, what are the main drivers? Who are the main players? What sports, what universities, what physician practices, sports medicine / joint reconstruction / trauma versus plastic surgeons, reconstructive and cosmetic versus neuro, concussion centers, big sport facilities, pickleball, golf, tennis, triathlon centers. And then we're also looking at different communities, high school sports. This isn't going to be, of course, you're going to think, well, they don't need longevity at this time. You're right. But a lot of high school sports, because they're now training year round, they are playing one sport more than the other sports. So there's more injuries, more time playing. And so concussions, instead of going in a dark room, not looking at light, not looking at a screen, you can go in hyperbaric oxygen therapy and heal that much faster. Unbelievable, as an example.
And what trends do you see there in this longevity recovery area when you are exposed to so many different places and different partners? What are the main trends you see in that area?
So across wellness in general, so hyperbaric is obviously big. I'm a little bit biased, but hyperbaric oxygen is big because it helps everybody, unless you are pregnant or you've had a collapsed lung or you have ear issues, right? And you can't pressurize. It's for everybody. That's one. Or claustrophobic. The other thing is places restore hyper wellness that has cryotherapy, which is a 3-minute session at, I think, minus 200 degrees or something like this, cools the inflammation and you feel great right afterwards. Red light therapy to help bring oxygen to those cells is another way to do it. And so IVs, right now when I'm working out and I'm training, 3 liters a day isn't enough. You know, I can tell you I feel dehydrated even though I'm having everything with electrolytes. It doesn't matter. So I need extra help with IVs, different vitamins, different amino acids, what have you. And so all of those things help. And so if you are really active, or specifically if you're living in a hot place or you're training a lot, these things help you recover and bring you back to a normal state. And so those things are going to continue to play. I think the new frontier still is, and it's here, but people don't know where to go or not familiar, are these human optimization companies, right? That are taking your blood, your hormones, your metabolic panels, your lipid panels, whatever. They're looking at the DNA, your genetic testing, your food sensitivity, all those things. They can do meta allergies, cancer screening for level 1 or stage 1 cancers. I mean, all of these things. You also have companies like Pronovo, something like this. They're relatively new, where they're doing whole body scans, right? So you have an idea, let's say at age 45, head to toe, where your body is for an MRI, like whether you can see the joint damage or you have cancer somewhere that they can detect. So there's all kinds of things. Of course, in the States, it's all cash-based. Most of it, I would say 95% is cash-based. A lot of those things, though, can be used. You can either use your FSA, HSA spending, which is good pre-tax medical dollars, or you can also get medical credit depending on the situation. So you can get a medical credit card and pay it no interest over a year or whatever the deal terms are. But to me, that's kind of the thing that's happening next. I think you've got companies like Nirvana, you've got companies like Function Health, Life Force, all these companies are coming out. The problem is no one knows where to go. Who's full of shit? Who's worth it? Who's worth the money? What do I get for it? What do I do, by the way, when I have the information? What do I do now that I have this information? And so I
love that challenge. So I think that's a huge problem you are tackling here. So how would you solve it, or do you have a solution for it?
For what?
For that no one knows what to do with all of this information.
Right. So the reality is some companies, not all of them, offer some sort of guidance or coaching. And it's probably worth looking at a company who can offer coaching guidance. It doesn't have to be a year thing or 2-year thing, but it should be at least a couple months, right? To look at the results and be, okay, you are lactose intolerant and you might not have known it, ironically, right? Or you are tracking for diabetes. You're fine today, but your glucose readings are indicating, even though you're super fit, but in 5-10 years, if you don't make some subtle changes, this could be a serious issue. So one of the things that they want to do for me is a glucose monitor, a continuous glucose monitor. I haven't done it yet because I've been busy, but that's just one example to get another piece of insight. So when you eat a piece of food, whether it's a chicken or whether it's a kiwi or a protein shake, you can see where the spikes are happening. So all of those things matter. So to me, the difference is really, if you're looking at the human optimization stuff, you cannot just get the tests. That's helpful because where you're at. But now the question is, what do you do with it? How do you optimize because now that you have to do better, right?
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. Now that you've gone out and spent the money, you have to do something with it. Otherwise, why bother, right? And so to me, that's one of the things about, let's say, this Nirvana Life specifically, they do. So they have all the testing, but then they also have coaching and concierge piece of it, which I think is a game changer. That's you need, I mean, and I'm sure there's other ones out there that have some sort of concierge coaching and so forth. But to me, that's what's a separator. And if you're in Europe or in the UK, I'm not sure what they have there, but that's how I would look, because otherwise you have this information and you don't do anything with it. So that's what I would do. Make sure you have some sort of coaching options that you can enroll in for a few months. Also, there's places out there that are not just at physiotherapists that look at your mechanics. How you move matters. If you're a
100%.
runner and you're not running properly, you don't have proper technique, or your glutes aren't activating, or you're not pushing through your toe, or you're not whatever, something's going to give. And you're going to get away with it till you don't, which is my story. I got away with it till I didn't at 40. So, and then I had to make a change, right? So that's really the bottom line.
So I think you have a great vision for how it should be, how it's supposed to be. When we look more at business side, what are your goals for the next 6 or 12 months? How do you want to spread this in a world from a business point of view?
So to consumers, right? How do we tell consumers about this, right? So a lot of times it's through word of mouth. It's through big partnership deals. So that's what I'm working on, because the influencer route, I have heard from multitude of companies that I've worked with or I've talked to, it didn't work. They've spent $1 million on a big celebrity, didn't get them anywhere. So the power of a personal story, let's say it could be mine, right? It's my story. And then influencing the right players. And so in the community, so really going deep. So having the ideal clients, the ideal partners, the ideal franchisees across the country, and then them leaning in on their community. That's what it comes down to, because I think you can bring a business to a market, but if you don't get involved in the community, you're not really in it for the right reasons, right? I think you've got to be there to help the community have an impact, right? Isn't that what we're all about? Anybody who's in life sciences, anybody who's in medical device, wellness, you're in it to have an impact. Otherwise, what are we doing? I can tell you personally what it's done for me and how my life has changed. But now it's time to bring it to the world, and people are learning, but again, they don't know where to start. So how do you start? You have to have real people aligning with your mission, and then they got to bring it to the community.
Yeah, 100%. And so if you would have a magic stick and you could solve one major problem in scaling that, what would you solve?
A major problem in scaling one of these franchise businesses or the other stuff? Well, I think it always comes down to the ideal client, because I feel if you have the ideal client and the ideal franchisee, it just makes everything easy, right? So for instance, with medical grade hyperbaric, I want someone who's really involved in the community, someone who can get and earn the referrals pretty quickly, whether it's through their network of surgeons, orthopedic, plastics, neuro, or community involvement with the sports teams or university sports or high school sports, other local sports, pickleball, tennis, golf clubs, triathlon, and someone who has a passion to help people, because I think passion, you can feel it. It's not something you can fake. Yeah. And people can tell if you believe in something or you don't. So I think that really starts it. You've got to have the right people and the right partners working your business. And then as far as a strategic partner, a large strategic partner, again, it always comes down to alignment. Are you aligned with our mission? Can we help you? And it's got to be a win-win, because if it's not, it's a one-sided deal and it never lasts very long. But for me, the long-term partnerships could be a variety of things, whether it's plastic surgeons, medical spas to help grow the business who have referral partners. But then when it comes to things, whether it's Restore Hyper Wellness, getting involved in the local gyms, the local Pilates, spinning studios, networking with in the community for different sports and recovery. And then I think as far as things like a Nirvana Life, they are really looking to grow through people who are middle-aged in a way, maybe in their 30s, but really 40s, people who really want to stay in the game, who want to perform at a high level, who want to live their best life, and who right now know they can make some serious changes and have an impact on their own life. You can course correct almost at any time, right? Your body has an incredible ability to heal, but there are times when you've taken it too far and there's no returning. So I think with Nirvana, we're looking for different clubs, different sports, different orthopedic surgeon groups who are going to adapt this and bring it to their patients. And like everything in life, it's not for everybody. None of these things are for everybody. It is for all the things I've just talked to, whether it's MD Hyperbaric, Restore Hyper Wellness, or Nirvana Life. It's for people who really want to help themselves. Not everybody, believe it or not, wants to help themselves. They say they do, but the proof is in the pudding when they actually take action, right? So you have to do the work. Yeah, nothing is handed to you. And unfortunately, the older you get, the harder it gets. But the reality is it's going to be easier when you start at 45 versus 65. Although it's not too late to start at 65. I'm not saying that. But the earlier you start and you really pay attention, the easier it's going to be to keep it up as you go older. It's part of your life. And what I'll say is it also goes back to even basic things like for women, getting your mammograms, getting your annual checkups, right? Getting your colonoscopy, endoscopy. In the States, they've just lowered the age to 45. So I did that this year because you want a starting point. Colon cancer is a silent killer and it's so treatable and preventable till it gets to a point if you haven't done anything about it, and then it's stage 4 and then you're in trouble. And so I think getting all of those regular checks done on the scheduled timelines that they're supposed to be done is also important. The prevention is key.
I think this is a wonderful words to the end of our podcast. So I think we learned a lot how your personal story transitioned into your work and what you see is needed in healthcare and the shift towards prevention. So I think very, very insightful. Is there anything else you want to share which I didn't touch with my questions?
Well, the only thing I do want to just make a note is that you are your own best advocate. Everybody knows that. Okay. No one's going to tell you to go to the doctor. No one's going to tell you to get the checkups. You have to do it. You have to take the initiative. So that's one thing. And then I've said it all along, and it's one of my main messages, which I actually had read somewhere. It resonated big time with me on Manaslu when I was there, which is you are never going to feel ready to do something. Start a new program, workout, whatever. You're never going to feel ready because ready isn't a feeling. It's a decision. So you have to decide to start. You have to commit to go get your steps, to drink the water, to do whatever. So it is a decision. You will never feel ready. And so that is my biggest takeaway for people, and even myself, because whether it's climbing, a new career, a new lifestyle thing, of whatever it might be, whether it's a program, a process, a test, whatever, you'll never feel ready. And that is a very powerful thing to remind yourself of.
Yes. Thank you so much, Megan. Love obviously your background with the mountains. Yeah, my heart is in the mountains, so very interesting. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.